Your payment can look smaller right up until real life touches it. And that is a part a lot of people are running into right now. They look at one housing number in a cheaper city, compare it to the number they were paying in maybe Florida, California, Arizona, New York, and it feels like relief. It feels like maybe this is finally the exit. Maybe this is a place where the pressure eases up. And then the rest of the costs start showing up. Because the move is not just about buying a cheaper house. The move, it's a commitment. And once that commitment is made, once you relocate, once you change jobs, once you move your family, once you lock yourself into a different local economy, the pressure starts changing shape. And a lot of people are noticing that right now. The Sun Belt got so expensive so fast that people started looking back toward the Midwest and other overlooked places. And on paper, it makes sense. I mean, you get a lower sticker prices, lower entry points, there's less crowding, maybe even a slower pace, but cheaper to enter is not the same thing as easier to live. And that's where this story actually begins. Because when people say things like, I can buy a house there for half the price, what they are usually reacting to is the first number. They are reacting to the actual listing. They are reacting to the fantasy version of affordability. They are not reacting yet to the wage level, the property tax bill, the insurance jump, the utility costs, the repair burden, the commute, or the reality that some places are cheap because the local economy never actually recovered. And that is why so many of the comments on this topic all start sounding very similar. Not identical, but similar. And you hear the same warning in different accents. Cheap for a reason, wages are low, taxes are high, insurance jump, utilities doubled, traffic got worse, jobs are thin, winters drag on forever, summers suffocate. Pick your poison. But that recognition matters because it pulls the conversation back to the original decision. You were not just choosing a map pin. You were choosing a payment environment. You were choosing what kind of cost pressure you were willing to live with after the move was already done. And a lot of households only realize that after the commitment is already active. It's a little like switching grocery stores because the milk is cheaper. Then finding out everything else in the cart costs more. The drive is longer, and now you are stuck making that trip every week. And the first number was real enough, it just was not the whole reality. And that is the mechanism people keep running into. A cheaper housing market can reduce the entry cost without reducing the total strain. And sometimes it just rearranges the strain itself. It moves the pressure from sticker price to wages, or from maybe mortgage size to insurance, or from rent level to job access, or from purchase price to property tax and maintenance. So the household feels relief at the front end, then friction on the back end. So picture somebody leaving a high-cost metro because they are tired of spending everything just to stay in place. They move to a smaller city because the house is $200,000 instead of $400,000. And then one day, that sounds like breathing room. On day 90, though, they start noticing that the local wages are thinner, that the tax bill is heavier than expected, and the insurance renewal is higher than it looked online. And now the house is cheaper, but the margin, it still feels tight. And that is not fake affordability. It is incomplete affordability. And this is where a lot of homeowners and buyers start seeing the real trap. The commitment, it remains fixed. I mean, you moved, you bought, you signed, but the total cost of living around that decision keeps moving anyway. It's like locking in the ticket price for a flight and then finding out the bag fee, the seat fee, the airport parking, and the last minute change fee were the part that actually wrecked your budget. Now, you still got on the plane, you just did not buy one number, and you bought the whole chain attached to it. And that is why this migration story matters less as a trend story and more as a housing pressure story. Because once you make the move, your control is usually a lot smaller than it looked beforehand. And that is the part people do not always say out loud. They say they wanted a lower cost of living. They say they wanted more space. They say they were tired of the grind, and all of that can be true. But once you get there, you may discover that you traded one kind of pressure for another one that may be harder to reverse. And a lot of buyers encounter this, especially after closing. They think they purchased a lower monthly life, but what they actually purchased was a different mix of exposure. Maybe the home is cheaper, but the local economy is weaker. Maybe the neighborhood works, but the schools do not. Maybe the town is calmer, but job options are thinner. And maybe the payment is lower, but now one repair hits a little bit harder because there is less income cushion around it. Now, pause for a moment there and really sit inside that. Like, you move to a place because it looks like the number finally works. Then 6 months later, the furnace goes out, the tax bill is higher than expected, and the insurance renews higher, and the jobs nearby still do not pay what you were used to. Now, what options exactly are yours? Do you move again? Do you commute farther? Do you accept tighter margins, dip into your savings? That is the midpoint pressure layer here. Because now the issue is no longer just, was this place affordable? Now the issue becomes, how many separate costs can move before this household loses flexibility again? And that is a really different question. And it is a lot closer to the real housing story. Because once that happens, the household starts adjusting around the house instead of the house supporting the household. And that is where people start delaying plans, putting off maintenance, staying put longer than they wanted, driving farther than they wanted, accepting work that they don't really want because the move already happened and the payment still has to be carried. And more people are realizing that the payment was layered, not just the mortgage or the rent, but the whole monthly structure around being there in the first place. And that is why the just move somewhere cheaper conversation falls apart so often in the real world. It sounds simple from far away, but once you get closer, every place has its own way of collecting the money. Now, Florida might hit you with insurance or congestion and inflating houses. Parts of the Midwest might hit you with lower wages, property taxes, harsher winters, slower job growth, or older housing stock that starts asking for repairs. And other markets might hit you with utilities or commuting time or weak mobility if you want to leave again. And it's like escaping one leaky boat by climbing onto another with different holes. You feel the change immediately. You just do not always know where the water is coming in yet. And a lot of people in the comments have stories like this and tell you the same thing over and over. People are not really debating whether trade-offs exist. They are warning that trade-offs arrive after the move, not before it.